The European Commission has given the green light to Ukraine and Moldova to become candidates for EU membership. Well, this is the first formal step in a process that normally lasts longer than a decade.
This basis of evidence is, of course, a historic and a political momentum. And we all know that Ukrainians are ready to die for the European perspective. We want them to live with us the European dream.
EU leaders are expected to endorse the Commission's recommendation at a summit next week. Still, the path ahead remains rocky, especially with some EU states expressing firm resistance to the bloc's enlargement. And for more, Rosie Burchard joins us live from Brussels. Rosie, let's talk about the steps that lie ahead from now till possible EU membership.
Well, there are many, and they are complex. First of all, as you rightly mentioned, this recommendation from the European Commission made in this building behind me just a couple of hours ago now goes over to the EU leaders, the 27 leaders of the EU member states, for their formal endorsement. That is expected to come next week at a summit here in Brussels. Then Ukraine will be officially a candidate for EU membership. But that candidate status, the European Commission says, comes with strings attached. They want Ukraine to implement some key reforms in the area of protecting the rule of law and also in the area of promoting standards when it comes to clamping down on corruption. So still some significant reforms to be taking place. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen admitted that achieving all of the different paths and standards to be achieved to become eligible for full membership might be difficult, while Ukraine is, of course, still actively at war with the war-torn nation. Still, Ukraine is very much aware of these caveats, and Dmytro Kuleba, who's Ukraine's foreign minister, has absolutely, with that in mind, still welcomed this news from the European Commission. He says this is European history in the making, so an important step for Ukraine, a very important political signal, but perhaps a long and winding road ahead.
Now, some EU countries also seem hesitant about giving Ukraine the green light. Why is that?
Indeed. Now, we did see three political heavyweights from Germany, France and Italy in Kiev yesterday saying they are throwing their political backing behind this bid for candidacy. But that view isn't shared among all the 27 EU member states. What I'm hearing here from diplomats behind closed doors is that some are concerned that, in fact, this could be giving Ukraine some sort of false hope. That's because there are other countries which have been patiently waiting in line to join the European Union. For example, North Macedonia became a candidate country in 2005. Albania became a candidate country in 2014. So this can be an extremely long process beyond just those reforms. There can also be political hiccups if one member state, for example, doesn't want a potential member to join for any political reason, for identity politics and so on. So this can be a long and fraught process. And the concern among some diplomats is that you have a big political moment today and then a couple of years down the line, nothing has changed. People become disillusioned. And there's certainly concerns that within the Western Balkans, where there are several EU candidate countries, that long wait can in fact play into Russia's hands as people become disappointed by the European Union, and therefore the European Union suspects more vulnerable to Russian influence.
All right, many thanks for those updates. Rosie Burchard in Brussels.
On the ground in Ukraine, hundreds of civilians are still trapped in the Azot chemical plant in the eastern city of Severodonetsk. The regional governor says only a complete ceasefire can help them now. He adds that constant shelling has made it virtually impossible to evacuate some 500 people in the shelter, including nearly 40 children. Well, David Biller joins us live from Lviv now. David, how severe is the situation in the besieged plant? Is a total ceasefire possible?
You mentioned that the plant is besieged. It's worth mentioning that this is the first time that the governor of Luhansk province has acknowledged that the plant is fully blocked off. He previously denied that being the case. So this really does resemble the situation we saw earlier this year at the Mariupol steel mill, when we had civilians and Ukrainian forces trapped inside. We don't know how many Ukrainian forces are inside the plant, but the governor of Luhansk province did provide precise figures for the number of civilians for the first time. He said 568 people, of whom 38 are kids. Now, He said, as you mentioned, that evacuation is not possible at this time, impossible due to the relentless shelling from the Russians, and that the only way that they could get people out would be with a ceasefire. The Luhansk People's Republic, the breakaway state, has also said that they would be open to a ceasefire, but the exact shape of that ceasefire remains to be seen. And earlier, Russia had conditioned the creation of a humanitarian corridor on the Ukrainian forces inside the plant laying down their arms and waving a white flag. Ukraine so far has not shown signs that it's willing to surrender in that plant. Now, Kyiv is negotiating with Moscow for the possible evacuation of the civilians from that plant, but according to the governor of Luhansk, so far those efforts have been unsuccessful. Now, the city of Severodonetsk is not yet fully blockaded. The Ukrainian forces are still fighting hard, but they have lost ground. They now, Russia now holds 80% of the city, and Ukraine is outmanned and outgunned. There's about 10,000, 12,000 people still in the city. It's the administrative center of Luhansk province, and it's an important one. It's also one of only 2 cities in Luhansk province that hasn't yet fallen to Russia.
Well, many thanks for that, David Biller there in Lviv.